Well, welcome everyone to the Generate 5.0 release office hours. We appreciate you attending. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Liz Brunette. I am a part of the SID TA team, and additionally am on the Generate team as their product owner. Mike, do you want to go ahead and mute? We're getting some background from you. Thank you. Okay. Can you all see my screen okay? All right, good. Okay, so just a quick highlight of the agenda. We will be reviewing the release notes. We have an updated format that we want to review a few things with you all. Then we will jump into the most important highlighted changes included within Generate 5.0. You will all get a quick preview of what's to come in 5.1. We will quickly look at the release calendar and then really want to open it up to discussion for you all to see if you have any questions or anything to clarify or whatnot. I'm going to turn it over to Nathan and Johnny to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nathan Clinton, currently suffering from some allergies, so I apologize for the sniffles. I'm the Senior Solutions Architect on the Generate project and on CDS.
Hello, my name is Johnny Cunningham. I am an ETL developer. Implementation specialist seems like a stretch, but I'll take it.
All right, thank you both. One quick thing before I forget, if you have any questions or comments during the conversation, Dan will be monitoring the chat, so you can always feel free to throw anything in there if anything pops up before our Q&A. All right. Okay, Johnny, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, so like Liz mentioned, we have recently revamped the release notes. So for those of you that have been with us for a little while, this is a new format. So we're going to go through it so you know where to find the things you need. And then depending on your role, because there may be different parts of the release notes that are more important to you. So we're just going to go through them. The new format. If you're new, same thing. You won't know the old style, but at least we'll go through it and you'll know where to find the things that you need to see. I used the release notes for 5.0, but this is just a general discussion of the format. So don't worry about the specific wording or anything like that. This is just to kind of go over the format. We're gonna discuss the 5.0 release right after this. So with the new format, the very first thing is the purpose. That's probably not going to change. The part that's probably going to be most relevant and you're probably going to spend most of your time in is the release overview, because it is going to have sort of a quick breakdown of any of the significant changes that are part of that release. This is where you're also going to find the things that you need to be aware of that impact your state specifically. Like if a table changes, so you might have to make a change to the ETL code, or if there is some sort of configuration change that's required on the state side. So that's where this is going to be documented. I'll show you there's another way to find those as well. But if you just read through, it's usually just a couple of paragraphs, depending on how much is in that specific release. And then if you'll notice this one specifically, the second paragraph there, the beginning of it says for states that are using the interface to migrate data, there is no change. So we'll put that in there as well, so you are aware that you don't have to worry about anything on your side for that. So that's the first block of the release notes. The second block is generated enhancements, and this is where we're actually going to break down the individual tickets on our side that make up those comments in the overview. So what I highlighted here, all of this is probably relevant to you, but the things that are going to that you could hone in on to help this make a little more sense. The category is the grouping of the file specifications that particular ticket or tickets pertain to. The report column is probably, that's the reason I put the arrow there, that's probably the ones you're going to want to see, or that are going to probably be most relevant, because it will show you the specific file specification that was affected by that change. then the approved change is just a blurb that we put in that describes what that specifically was. The reference number is the ticket on our side, which doesn't mean a whole lot to you specifically, but if you want to reference it, if you have a question about it or something, that would be helpful to us. And then the type of impact column, I wanted to highlight that because we've got 3 types right now that may expand as we start working on other things, but we'll see. We have data, user interface, source to staging, ETL, and you can see there's at least 1 row here for each of those. The source to staging ETL is what I mentioned, that you might also see the impact that you need to be aware of in your state specifically, because that ticket, if you'll notice, the description says that 2 new columns were added to the K-12 staff assignment table, which would then mean you would need to modify your ETL to populate those 2 new fields. So this is another way to see things that might impact you directly that you need to make changes on your side. And then it gives you the file grouping that applies to, in this case, personnel. And then the last block is just the upgrade procedure. If we ever make a change that's going to change how you apply an update, we would define it here. We haven't done that in quite a while, so it's a very short block that just says there are no changes. And then compatible systems, as we test more and more things, as new versions of software come out, we'll test against those. This just describes the ones that we tested against for this particular release. So that's an overview of the new format, and now we'll talk specifically about the changes for 5.0. The biggest change, and for those of you that are around for 4.2, we had our first file grouping files. It was 002 and 089 child count that used the new refined staging directly to the RDS migration stored procedure. And we talked about it in that release, so we'll just go over it really quickly, that it basically bypasses the IDS. It takes the data directly from staging, puts it directly into the fact and dimension tables. Still uses store system reference data to make the translations that we did before. It does not impact how you load the staging tables. So the staging tables load exactly the same as they did prior. With 5.0, we were able to expand the group of files that now use this refined process. So now all of the personnel files, the IDEA personnel files, so 70, 99, and 112, all of the discipline files, 5, 6, 7, 88, 143, 144, and then exiting 009. So they now use this refined process. It's a lot easier. It's faster. It's easier to troubleshoot. I think you'll like it. So now we've got all of the IDEA files included in that group. And that was the big change. There were some toggle issues that we had uncovered with the data was saving correctly, but how it was presenting back when you would go into toggle, sometimes you wouldn't be able to see your change, which would then make you think it didn't save. And there were some issues with that. So we got some toggle bug fixes in with 5. And then we added quite a bit of end-to-end testing, which doesn't directly apply to you, but it helps on our side because as we are putting out a new release, we run all these end-to-end tests, and it tests the data that gets loaded into staging and how that data gets ultimately migrated into the report table. So we can verify that based on what we loaded into staging, we expect to have this many records, and we have tests that will do that for us. So we can always now we can do a lot more regression testing as we do this work. Well, I sound bad singular. I sound really bad double. But anyway, so that so we added quite a bit more testing on our side, which will benefit you ultimately. Generally speaking, those are for the specific files or specific things that we added. There's additional logic that was added for 33 and 35 because we had a state that worked on those this year, and I think actually submitted both of those this year. So we had to make some changes on our side when we started working with live state data. We found a couple issues, but we got those resolved, so they're in 5. There were some issues with how the zero counts were calculating. We fixed that. One thing we ran across, just to make everybody aware, if you haven't done the 5.0 update yet, there is a check in the code as it's doing the update that looks for the folder name of the background application, which is generate.background. If in your specific installation, you've modified that so that you have generate something.background, it will cause the update to fail at that point. Well, not fail. It'll cause it to do something different than it's supposed to do, which is ultimately failing. So just be aware of that. So the file, or sorry, the folder name needs to be generate.background, and we can talk in more detail about that if you think that's an issue. And then also the last one, and this is actually the extra configuration files, is in the release notes. So you don't have to worry about trying to remember what I'm saying. It's actually documented in the release notes. Coming from our server, because the file comes from ours, we have multiple instances of generate loaded, and we realized it was actually pulling the configuration file for each of those and putting them in the update. In almost all cases, it doesn't cause a problem, but we did find one or two issues or one or two instances where it did. So we're suggesting that you go through and delete those. And we've actually made some fixes on our side so that they won't be included in future releases. But if you have the release, and again, it's documented in the release notes, so just look at that, verify it in your installation, and then I think you're good. I kind of flew through that because I have a limited amount of time. So I think I'm passing it over to Nathan.
Okay, and I'm just going to give you a quick preview of what we're going to be seeing in Generate 5.1. We're going to continue to work on creating more of those staging to RDS scripts, those more streamlined background ETL processes. We're going to work specifically on the directory scripts for 029 and 039, make that process a lot smoother and easier to debug, a lot faster. We're also going to be working on 210, working on building those scripts out and actually doing full end-to-end testing on that file spec as well. We also have some small issues with file spec 118, and we're going to be resolving those, and we're also going to be developing an end-to-end test on that to make sure that any issues that we do have in it now that they don't regress and come back. So those are the IDEA specific files that we'll be working on. We will be also working on adding, fixing some issues that we have with migrations, but also doing more end-to-end testing on some of these state-defined reports that we have in the system. So these are reports that we created a couple of years ago that use your IDEA or use your the data that's already in Generate to produce additional reporting. So we have several, but this release we're going to focus on these two: disability removals from children with disabilities, ages 3 through 21, and then the next one is the exit from special education. So we'll have the issues that we have some known issues with those migrations. We're going to work on those, develop the end-to-end tests. The other remaining, I think it's 6 reports, we'll be doing kind of the same thing for those over the next several releases. And then really from there, it's going to be anything that kind of crops up during implementation. So we always like to make sure that we have space reserved for any issues that we discover during implementation. Things with new scenarios in the data or different interpretations that we need to be able to support. So whatever we kind of come across in the next several months, we'll make sure we load those into the system as well.
All right, thank you, Johnny and Nathan. Okay, briefly just running through this. So the 5.0 was released earlier this month. 5.1, we are targeting likely October, middle of October to end of October for 5.1. And then 5.2, again, likely there at the holidays, probably around the mid-December timeframe. All right, and then here we want to open it up to some Q&A. I see we have some chats already from Scott. Oh, there you go. Okay. All right, so I am going to mute myself. Anyone else have anything? And I think you should be able to turn your cameras on and unmute yourselves if you have any specific questions.
Liz, could you scroll over to the slide 9, I think it was, or 8 perhaps, so that people can review?
This one?
The 5.0 notes. Yeah, there you go. Thanks.
Okay, so it looks like Drew had a question. Is there our location for these slides? Oh, okay. Yeah, I think Travis and or Dan will be sending that out at the end of the call. Is that right, Dan?
They'll be available posted on our website.
Perfect.
Hey, this is Satish. So last time when we upgraded the, so we had some issues with the database, because we are on cloud. So we had some issues renaming for deleting some files, and renaming some folder structure, those kind of things. So I already checked with Johnny, so Johnny mentioned that, so we don't see that kind of issue, right? So because we are not touching any database folder, right, Johnny?
Sorry, had to come off mute. Well, every release is going to touch some of them because any of the stored procedures or functions that were modified as part of that release. So every release is probably going to, I can't imagine we're going to have any that don't.
Oh, okay. No, last time because we deleted one, it was trying to update one of the folder structure, right? Because on the installation level. So since that was the major release, right? So I think someone from engineering team, so we had call, and so we shared our screen and then we fixed the issue, right, Johnny? So I want to be more proactive, before we do the upgrade.
I was going to say, I remember that we had to. I don't remember specifically what we ended up doing.
Okay.
I apologize. But that may have been, I don't remember if that was Nathan, if you were involved in that, if that may have been Sumant. I'm not sure.
I think Sumant.
Okay.
Yeah, it was probably most likely configuration issues. But yeah, I mean, as long as you have a SQL database running the the server on the back end, I think the upgrade process should work smoothly. I think because you're in the cloud, if we want to, maybe we can take this one offline, just because I know you have
definitely, Nathan. Yeah, because usually, so we have the SQL server on the on-premise, right? So since we are running the SQL server on the Azure managed instance, so we cannot change the folder level permissions or the structure, So of course, yeah, we can update all the stored procedures or any schema, those kind of things, but yeah, so not on the instance level, right? So instance level configurations. Well, yeah, definitely we can take it offline, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, great.
And then do you see John's question?
Yes, I do. Before we get to that, Ria, I just want to let you know there was one other state, I believe, Johnny, one of your states also has upgraded to version 5. Do you?
Oh, yes. And they were a state that we had spent quite a bit of time working on their configuration stuff for the last one to make sure we had all the configurations correct. And yeah, their update took 10 minutes. I think worked as expected. 2 button pushes, about 10 minutes.
All right. So, John, specifically for that question, and I know we're going to be talking about your deployment. So the issue we found was the deployment actually looks for the folder name generate.background to determine if it's deploying the web or the background application. We're going to change that so it looks for a specific file, but if it doesn't find the name generate.background in the path, then it thinks it's the web app and deploys the web application files. So what you can do is just take generate test.background and change it to generate.background.test. That still contains the specific string generate.background, and it'll pass the check, and it'll deploy the background files to the right location rather than the web files. Yeah, so that's the one thing that we found late in the release. So that's the one caveat. Most states probably don't need to worry about that. We discovered it, I think just right before the release in one state in West Virginia. We made the update. We just updated their configuration. We figured we would, rather than delay in the release and with that one specific update, we just let everybody know. So basically just change the name of the folder, make sure IS is pointing to those new locations, and then we can try the release again.
Thank you. That sounds good. I don't know if that's the other thing about my my setup that you were saying we need to talk about, that we did hit a database constraint when we were trying to move up to version 5. And so it
Okay.
failed.
Okay, yeah, we can. I didn't see that. Sorry. Yeah, we can talk about that, and it may have been process related. But I'll get back to you on that one. I haven't looked into it to investigate yet.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the group?
This is John Barry again. I do have a big picture question. I love the changes with the release notes. So now it's easier to call out and see where schema changes have been made and I need to update scripts and so on. I do have a question just about your ticketing system. I think I've asked this before. It would be helpful, if I'm running into issues and I'm all of a sudden spending hours trying to figure it out, where you maybe already have known about that issue, where if there's a way for me to look up and see what has been already identified as a bug, so then I don't have to spend so much time looking into it, that would be helpful. So I don't know if that's something on your roadmap at some point in the future.
Yeah, it absolutely 100% is. We're looking at ways that we can make more information generate open and available, including the ticketing system, road mapping information, and maybe even go further than that. We're strategizing other ways to make it more open.
Yeah, and John, for right now, I would say if you run into something like that, you can always just shoot me an email, and I can try and look through our backlog of what we have, or try and figure out if it's something that someone else has already, brought to the table, and ping you back until we get that ticketing system that Nathan just mentioned up and running.
Yeah, no problem. Johnny's always been great, but I know he's busy doing lots of things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, anything else?
All right, I'll throw one thing out there since we have some time, so I apologize. I've been advocating for an open source community, similar to CDS, to exist similar to Generate. So I'll go ahead and throw a comment on that. Is there any interest in having that in the next year or two for Generate?
Yeah, so I thought Nathan was going to jump to answer that question. So yes, Drew, we have actually been similar to what Nathan was just saying about the ticketing system. We've been strategizing, trying to figure out how and where to bring like all of the information and code for Generate. What's the best way to bring that to the open source community? So that's something that we've been discussing and trying to strategize as well. So yes, I would say that that's definitely in the roadmap for the next year. And we will likely have more information on that to come pretty quickly.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, we have about 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna scroll to this is the link for our survey. As you all know, we really value if these meetings are helpful, anything that you think that we could do to improve, anything that you would like to see differently. Please, if you could copy this link copy this link, or I think Dan's going to throw it in the chat for you all. Oh, he already did. but please just take a few minutes to do so. It's really helpful for us to see all of your feedback. And again, if there's anything you specifically didn't like, or if there's anything that you would like to see different, or items that you did like about the call, it's helpful for us in planning and making sure that we're addressing all of the needs of the stakeholders. All right, anything else before we wrap up? I think that's our last slide. Anyone from the SID team?
I'm good.
I don't have anything.
All right. Well, thank you all for your time, and don't hesitate to reach out to any of us if you have something that pops up once you hop off this call.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks,
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye,
care.
thank you.
Really quickly, I thought about it for those of us that are still in there. I guess Liz dropped.
I'm still here. Yeah.
But I was thinking about this because it just popped up. So for the people that attended, multiple questions were asked and they, got to hear some. Maybe we need to come up with a way to whatever the resulting answer is doesn't only go to the person that asked the question, but everybody that attended. Because they didn't ask it, but they heard the question. So they might be interested in the ultimate answer. Like some of these we said, oh, we're going to give you more detail or we're going to get back to you.
I see.
Provide a way for everyone who attended to see the answer to all of the questions, not just the question they asked specifically.
Yeah.
Whatever
That's
mechanism
an
that is.
interesting, interesting follow up. Let's do that in some way. I agree. For the good of the whole community, right? So for everyone's learning. I'll follow up on that with Liz and hopefully get it in time for the fall.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.